Here's a question that doesn't get asked nearly enough in the gardening world. What if the best thing you could add to your soil was also the easiest thing you could make, and it was literally falling from the sky every autumn? Today you're going to find out. We're pitting two of the most popular homemade soil amendments against each other, compost and leaf mold. You're going to learn how each one works, what it actually does for your garden, where each one falls short, and most importantly, which one might be the smarter play for your time and your soil. Stick with me until the end, because the answer might genuinely surprise you, and there's one leaf mold trick near the end that almost nobody talks about. Let's get into it. What compost actually does for your garden? Okay, so let's start with compost, the undisputed celebrity of the soil amendment world. If you spend any time in gardening communities, online, or at your local garden center, you know compost gets treated like some kind of magic elixir. And honestly, it kind of is. Compost is decomposed organic matter, kitchen scraps, yard waste, plant trimmings, all broken down into a rich, dark, crumbly material that your garden absolutely loves. And the benefits are real. When you work compost into your soil, you're doing several things at once. First, you're feeding your plants. Compost is packed with a slow release buffet of nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and a whole crew of micronutrients. It's not a fertilizer exactly, but it feeds the soil in a way that synthetic fertilizers just can't replicate. Plants that grow in compost-enriched soil tend to be healthier, more resilient, and more productive. Second, you're improving your soil structure. Whether you're working with dense clay that drains like a parking lot, or sandy soil that can't hold moisture for more than 10 minutes, compost helps. It loosens clay and helps sandy soil retain water and nutrients. It's one of those rare things that genuinely works for almost every soil type. Third, and this is the part people don't talk about enough, compost is teeming with microbial life. Billions of bacteria are working in there, and when you add compost to your garden beds, you're inoculating your soil with that microbial army. A living, biologically active soil is a healthy soil, and compost suppresses disease. A biologically diverse, well-composted soil naturally outcompetes a lot of the pathogens that cause plant disease. It's not foolproof, but it's a real benefit. So yeah, compost is legitimately great. The question is, what does it cost you to get it? The honest downsides of composting. Here's where we need to have a real conversation, because the composting world has developed a bit of a culture around it, and that culture can make this whole thing way more complicated than it needs to be. Making compost has become almost a competitive sport for some folks. There are camps swearing by specific carbon to nitrogen ratios, your greens versus your browns, layered just so, turned on a schedule, moisture levels dialed in like you're making sourdough bread. And look, if that's your thing and you love it, great. But for a lot of people, all that precision becomes a barrier. It becomes a source of anxiety rather than a gardening joy. The speed obsession is a huge part of this. There's a whole category of composting methods centered entirely around how fast you can produce finished compost. Hot composting, tumbler systems, aerated static piles, and honestly, most of the time, there's just no need to rush it. Once your growing season is underway, there's no harm in letting a pile sit until next year. Your garden is not going anywhere. Compost doesn't spoil if you're patient. But the biggest practical problem? If you get it wrong, a compost pile can genuinely stink. We're talking about the kind of smell that gets you a look from your neighbor over the fence. A smelly compost pile is usually a sign something's off. Too wet, not enough airflow, too much nitrogen. And it's the kind of problem that attracts varmints. Raccoons, opossums, rats. Things you'd rather not encourage to visit your yard. So compost is powerful, no question. but making it well takes real attention and effort, and not everyone wants to put in that work. Now, what if there was a way to get incredible garden transforming humus with almost zero effort on your part? That's exactly what leaf mold promises, and the science behind why it works is pretty fascinating. Before we go on, be sure to hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss a video. What is leaf mold and why should you care? Alright, leaf mold. The name sounds a little intimidating, but don't let it put you off, because this might be the most underrated soil amendment in home gardening, period. Leaf mold is simply decomposed leaves. That's it. You rake up your leaves, you pile them up, you wait. And over time, fungi break them down into a gorgeous, dark, crumbly material that looks and feels almost like forest floor soil, which makes sense because that's basically what it is. Here's the key difference from compost. Where compost is driven mostly by bacterial activity, leaf mold is a fungal process. Fungi are the ones doing the heavy lifting here, and that matters a lot for what the finished product does in your garden. Fungal-dominated soil amendments tend to be especially beneficial for perennials, trees, shrubs, and woody plants. It's also great for flowers. Fungi form symbiotic relationships with plant roots called mycorrhizae, essentially a network that dramatically extends a plant's ability to absorb water and nutrients. When you add leaf mold to your garden, you're not just adding organic matter. You're potentially introducing and establishing that fungal network in your soil. Leaf mold's benefits don't stop there. It's one of the best moisture retention amendments you can use. Studies have shown that leaf mold can increase the soil's water holding capacity by over 50%. If you're gardening in hot, dry conditions, and if you're in Florida, you know those summer stretches where the heat just bakes everything. Having that extra moisture holding capacity in your soil is genuinely game-changing. It improves soil structure beautifully, it encourages earthworm activity, and it creates a kind of light, airy, biologically rich soil that plant roots absolutely thrive in. So how do you actually make it? Because here's the thing, it might be the easiest gardening project you've ever done. How to make leaf mold. It's almost embarrassingly simple. Ready? Here's the entire process for making leaf mold. Rake up your leaves. Pile them up. Wait. That's genuinely most of it. No precise ratios. No turning schedule. No monitoring internal temperatures. You just need a pile of leaves and some patience. Now a wire cage or simple bin will help keep the pile from spreading out as it settles, and it will settle quite a bit as the leaves compress and break down. An open pile works too, but over months and months it'll start to sprawl. A containment system just keeps things neat. The leaves you probably have the most of, maple leaves, oak leaves, the classic deciduous stuff, will take roughly a year to break down into finished leaf mold. Southern trees like magnolias and live oaks tend to have tougher, thicker leaves with more tannins, and those can take up to 3 years. So if you got a big magnolia dropping leaves, just set those expectations early. Now you might have heard about various hacks to speed up leaf mold. Lots of people suggest adding a nitrogen source, coffee grounds, glass clippings, compost, to get things moving faster. Here's the thing about that. The moment you start adding nitrogen to your leaf pile, you're essentially turning it into compost. You're creating a bacterial-driven process, not a fungal one, and you lose the specific benefits that make leaf mold worth making in the first place. Plus, it's work, and half the point here is that you're not doing extra work. If you want to speed up the timeline a little without compromising the process, there actually is one real method, but it only becomes available after your first batch is done, and it's a technique that most people have never heard of. The leaf mold secret nobody talks about. Here it is. Once you've got your first finished batch of leaf mold, save a couple of shovelfuls from the bottom of the pile before you use it all. That dark, crumbly material at the bottom is loaded with the exact fungi that broke everything down. When you start next year's leaf pile, put that same material right at the core of the new pile. Give the whole thing a few turns with a pitchfork or a shovel to get some airflow in there, and give it a sprinkle with a hose to add some moisture. What you're doing is inoculating the new pile. You're seeding it with an active, established fungal colony from the start. No waiting for fungi to colonize from scratch. This can cut your timeline from the usual 9 to 12 months down to around 6 months. That's real progress. Anything faster than that, and you're almost certainly not making leaf mold anymore. You've made a compost pile. One more thing to know. Leaf mold can look like nothing's happening for a long time, and that's totally normal. The outer 6 inches or so of the pile tends to dry out, and it'll just look like a pile of old leaves sitting there doing nothing. Don't be fooled. The action is happening underneath. When the next season rolls around, just dig past that dry outer layer, and you'll find the rich, dark humus beneath, ready to go. Use those dry outer leaves as a starter for next year's pile. Nothing goes to waste. So which one wins? Here's the honest answer. Both are excellent. They each have a place in a well-managed garden. Compost delivers more nutrients, works faster once it's done, and is incredibly versatile for all kinds of plants and all kinds of garden situations. If you're feeding heavy feeders like tomatoes or corn, compost is hard to beat. But leaf mold? Leaf mold is the underdog that punches way above its weight. It's nearly effortless to make. It builds incredible soil structure. It supports the fungal networks that most plants depend on more than we realize. And if you've got deciduous trees on your property, you've already got an unlimited supply of raw material falling right into your yard. Think about that. The leaves most people bag up and haul to the curb are literally free, high-quality soil amendment, and all they need is a pile and some time. There's no rule that says you have to pick one. Run a compost pile for your kitchen scraps and green waste, and run a leaf mold cage for your autumn leaves. Use the compost for feeding, use the leaf mold for soil building, and watch what happens to your garden over the next few years. But if someone held a gardening glove to your head and made you choose just one, for the sheer ease of production, the quality of the finished product, the long-term soil health benefits, and the fact that you can make it with almost zero effort, leaf mold is a very compelling case. The bottom line is this: your leaves are not yard waste. They're a resource, and turning them into leaf mold is one of the highest leverage, low-effort things you could do for your garden's long-term health. Give compost the credit it deserves, but don't sleep on what fungi can do for your soil. Both of these amendments can transform your garden, but only one of them practically makes itself. That's all for now. Subscribe to see more.